July 9th, 2026, Wolfsburg. Volkswagen Supervisory Board met to discuss the largest restructuring plan in the company's history. Cut 100,000 jobs, close 4 factories. That was the plan CEO Oliver Blume put on the table. The meeting ended. The plan was not approved. Employee representatives blocked a decision that could shape the future of Europe's largest automaker. That same day, workers protested outside the Zwickau plant. The premier of Lower Saxony said the state would not accept the plan. Volkswagen shares fell to their lowest level in 16 years. This is not a story about a CEO who failed. Volkswagen's executives already know what needs to be done to save the company. Fewer models, lower costs, and a smaller production system. But at Volkswagen, finding the right solution does not mean you can actually put it into practice. Because when management pushes for change, the other power centers inside the company can answer with a single word: no. And that is exactly where the real crisis at Europe's largest automaker begins. Volkswagen's problem is not that it does not know what to do. It is that no one is entirely sure who has the authority to decide. From the outside, Volkswagen still looks enormous. In 2025, it sold 9 million vehicles and generated close to 322 billion euros in revenue. Those figures look less like a failing company and more like a global industrial empire. Yet, in the same year, its operating profit margin fell to 2.8%. A year earlier, it had been 5.9%. In other words, profitability almost halved in a single year. So Volkswagen's problem is not that it cannot sell cars. The problem is that selling millions of cars no longer produces enough profit to finance the vast system built around those sales. The company is trying to support too many brands, models, factories, platforms, and layers of management at the same time. When demand was strong, this structure gave Volkswagen a major advantage of scale. But when sales slow, the same structure becomes a heavy cost burden. Before the pandemic, Volkswagen was preparing for a world in which it would produce roughly 12 million vehicles a year. They quote, for today, its target capacity has fallen to 9 million. The gap is not just 3 million cars, it means production lines running below capacity, underused factories, scattered investment, and an organization more complex than it needs to be. And while Volkswagen carries this burden, its competitors are not standing still. Chinese automakers, led by BYD, are developing new models faster, bringing electric vehicles to market at lower cost, and integrating software more easily into the core of the car. In the first quarter of 2026, Volkswagen sales in China fell by 20%. At the same time, the company has to spend billions of euros on batteries, new platforms, factory conversions, and software development. That is why the standard explanation for Volkswagen's troubles is simple. China rose, the electric vehicle revolution began, and Volkswagen fell behind. That explanation is not wrong, but it is incomplete. China explains why Volkswagen needs to change. It does not explain why Volkswagen cannot change. China created the pressure. The paralysis comes from much closer to home, from the company's own power structure. Volkswagen's CEO may look extremely powerful in public. He presents his strategy, speaks to investors, and announces cost targets. But, as July 9th showed, visibility does not necessarily mean decision-making power. The board has 20 seats. 10 belong to shareholder representatives and the other 10 to employee representatives. Decisions such as opening or relocating a factory require a 2/3 majority. At Volkswagen, employees are not an outside group that objects after decisions have been made. They sit directly inside the decision-making system. Then there is the company's ownership structure. Porsche SE controls 53.3% of Volkswagen's voting rights. Through this structure, the interests of the Porsche and Piëch families sit at the center of the company. The state of Lower Saxony holds 20% of the voting rights and can appoint 2 members to the supervisory board. This gives a regional government direct influence over the most important strategic decisions of a private company. The state premier's decision to reject the plan to cut 100,000 jobs before the meeting had even taken place was no coincidence. It is a right granted by law. Qatar also holds 17% of the voting rights. Within this structure, management stands on one side and employees and unions on the other. Then come the families, the state government, and global investors. But the map of power does not end there. Volkswagen is not a simple car company built around a single brand. Audi, Porsche, Skoda, Seat, Cupri, Volkswagen commercial vehicles and other divisions may belong to the same group, but each has its own management structure, budget, factories, and priorities. That is why discontinuing a model at Volkswagen is not merely a product planning decision. That model may determine the future of a factory, the budget of a brand, and the influence of a management team. Closing a factory is not merely a cost calculation either. Consider the 4 plants currently being discussed as possible closures: Hanover, Zwickau, Emden, and Audi's Neckar-Sulm facility. Together, they employ more than 45,000 people. Each one sits at the center of a local supplier network, local tax revenues, and regional political stability. This is where the real conflict begins. From management's perspective, the equation is clear. If costs do not fall, Volkswagen will lose competitiveness. If the number of models is not reduced, investment will remain fragmented. If factories are not used efficiently, the company will keep financing a system built for cars it no longer sells. Employee representatives see the situation differently. Workers did not design the delayed software projects. They did not choose overlapping platforms. They did not approve failed investments or expensive strategic reversals. And an agreement signed in 2024 guaranteed that Volkswagen's German plants would not close before 2030. Management's attempt to walk away from that promise is eroding trust even further. So the question employees are asking is simple. Why should workers pay for management's past mistakes? For Lower Saxony, the issue is not just the balance sheet. Volkswagen plants are at the center of regional economies. Closing a facility would not only reduce the company's costs, it could also destabilize a city's income, supplier network, and political balance. Investors apply a different kind of pressure. In their view, Volkswagen should spend less capital, generate higher returns, and stop funding overlapping projects at the same time. The brands have their own defensive instincts as well. Audi wants to protect its investments, Porsche its profitability, Skoda its products, and the Volkswagen brand its factories. The critical point is this: none of these groups is acting entirely irrationally. Management wants to keep the company competitive. Employees want to protect their jobs. Politicians defend their regions. The families protect control, investors protect their capital, and the brands protect their own influence. Each side may be right from its own perspective, but when everyone protects only their own interests, Volkswagen as a whole may be unable to move. That is exactly what emerged from the July 9th meeting. The parties failed to agree, the plan was put on hold, and the problem was left unresolved for the next meeting. If you find the behind-the-scenes power struggles inside companies like this interesting, remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Because the real story at Volkswagen is not just about the auto industry. It is about how decisions are actually made inside the world's largest companies. It would also be a mistake to see Volkswagen's current structure as nothing more than a bad system. Because for a long time, this system worked. In other words, Volkswagen's current power structure did not emerge by accident. It was the very system that helped the company grow. But that success came at a price. Over time, every factory gained a defender, every brand developed its own institutional interests, every employee group had a representative, and every major investment acquired political backing. Every change also came to mean that someone would lose power, budget, jobs, or political standing. The system worked, but it turned Volkswagen into a company that is easier to protect than to change. That is the company's central contradiction. Volkswagen has to shrink, but it cannot appear to be abandoning its employees. It has to reduce the number of factories, but it cannot destabilize the regions that depend on them. It has to cut the number of models, but it does not want to weaken the identity and power of its brands in the process. It needs to centralize technology, but it cannot afford to create a new and slow-moving bureaucracy. It must generate higher profits while continuing to invest in electric vehicles, batteries, software, and new products. In other words, Volkswagen has to dismantle part of its old system. Yet to carry out that transformation, it still needs the support of the very same system. That is why replacing the CEO would not solve the problem. Nor would building a better electric car. Even a recovery in Chinese sales would only ease the pressure. It would not eliminate the fundamental conflict inside the company. because the central question remains the same. Who will pay the price as Volkswagen changes? Will Hanover close or Zwickau? Which brand will step back? If the workforce is reduced, which region will bear the burden? And who will make all of these decisions?